tuned into Breaking the Mask of Depression with your host, Diva with Depression.
Hey guys, welcome to Breaking the Mask of Depression with your host, Diva with Depression. Who's me? I hope everybody is doing well. As you can tell from the title, there'll probably be a lot of triggers and a lot of F words thrown around this episode. So if that bothers you or may trigger you, then I'm going to tell you to step away now. I hope everybody is doing well. I have had a bumpy few weeks, and that's why I decided to make an unstructured episode, because I've had several conversations within the past couple of weeks with different people, and it's amazing to me that so many people don't understand what we're living with. And if I get personal with what I'm living with, I talk about it, I write about it, but there's still so many people that don't acknowledge the mental illness situation until it affects them. And that bugs the shit out of me. So, let me get right into it. I'll start with something good that happened. I was invited to speak at a conference in Florida for a major pharmaceutical company. And I got flued out, y'all. And I was on a panel that was talking about living with mental illness and caregiving for somebody with a mental illness. And, speaking to the salespeople. And it was an amazing experience. But that was one of the things that made me decide to do a free fall episode, because, when you look at all these people and, these are the money makers, the movers and shakers, and, some of them were pretty moved by the things that I talked about, which is nothing compared to what I talk about on the podcast or, on my page. But that was one thing that happened to let me know that there are so many people that just don't understand what goes on behind the mask. Most of the information that is put out is I have depression, but then I did insert whatever and now I'm cured. And I'm not knocking that. If someone starts and finds what's good for them and what works for them and gets them to a place of healing, then I think that's amazing. But the tough stuff is not talked about enough. And so being at the conference was an amazing experience, but that was part of it was a learning experience for me, because I'm behind the scenes all the time. The podcast, I am the writing or the website, or it's just very rare that I'm in front of an audience sharing my story. And so I was a little overwhelmed, but it was wonderful. And so it was so amazing, y'all, that I showed the hell out and came home and had COVID. So, which was a miserable, oh my gosh, the flu is nothing compared to COVID. Let's just say that. And being mentally ill and physically ill and then having COVID, it was a real bitch. And it's not over yet. You can hear my voice and it goes up and down, in and out. I took a test and it's negative and supposedly it's gone. But everyone that has I've spoken to that has had it said that it lasts longer. So welcome to my world. And at the end of my COVID treatment experience, I've done 2 episodes. Interviews. I did one interview with COVID. I did another interview and my voice sounded worse than this, but it was important to me. I don't like to disappoint people. And if I say that I'm going to do something for someone, especially something pertaining to their work, I try to stick it out. And so that was number 2 of my of why I'm here. I also last week went to a retreat, and it was a beautiful retreat and some beautiful people, and it was wonderful to be out in nature and, vibing, connecting. But it was overwhelming. There were 40 something people, that you interacted with every single day, breaking bread 3 times a day and, various activities. And it was a lot for me. It was, but it was nice. And I pushed through, and my sister in love, made sure that I was okay. But that's what got me to this place, because all of that I did, I was a miserable, funky person underneath it all. And I cried about 2 weeks ago because my mask is so thick and convincing that I'm mad at myself, that I go out into the public and I give you guys the impression that, strangers, they're like, what do you mean? You live with this and you live with that. Look at you. And I had a meltdown because I thought that I had gotten better. I know all the time that I was at work, at Girl Scouts and PTA and all of that stuff. I know that I was wearing the mask then, but I didn't realize now how much the mask still exists. I was in Florida at an amazing event, and it was all I can do to get to my room to just decompress and cry, because my spiral started, months and months ago, and it didn't stop just because I had a conference to go to. It didn't stop because I had a retreat to go to. Shit, it didn't even stop for COVID, and part of me, that is my platform, living in hell, living with this illness, wearing the mask. Hell, it's in the title, but there are moments when I think it's bouts with imposter syndrome, that I feel like a fraud. And I feel like, I don't know, like I'm letting people down, because that's, like I'm a fake. And, I tell people every day that I'm proud of them. I tell them, to keep holding on when I can't hold on. We can start with med changes. I, as you guys know, I have severe treatment resistant depression. And so trying to find a medication that works is like trying to find a needle in a haystack. And about 2 weeks ago, I was convinced that I broke my psychiatrist. I'm serious. I laughed at the time, but I'm serious, because she just looked so exasperated. Like you've taken every medication that's out there. And, she didn't say that. She did say that, but, I'm adding my own words that I've taken every medication out there and I'm still in this place. And, so of course we just keep playing with the same medications and playing with the dosages. And, if you don't know, the medication changes and the side effects, that's brutal enough. But when you're in a downward spiral and you have to constantly go through the med changes and the side effects and the adjustments, it's, you feel like you're just not going to make it. Because let's just talk about side effects, how they can break you, every day. If you're you.